Everybody likes to sort of hang out with their own. But I'm not gonna let my gnome hang out with Roddy's gnome, because Roddy's gnome looks like it's on crack or something. Roddy's gnome is the gnome that comes over to your house and steals your television.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm BB Funerology here, and I like to talk Big Brother. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the top 10 moments of Big Brother Season 3. And remember, there is no right list, this is just my list. And I want to give a major spoiler warning for all things Big Brother Season 3. Alright, let's dive right in. So at one point early in the first week, when everyone's still getting to know each other, Danielle and Kiara are hanging out in the bathroom, and they notice Jerry come out of the bathroom and not wash his hands. So naturally the girls are pretty grossed out by this. I mean, come on, I'd be grossed out too. But the way they frame this segment is pretty funny because they cut to Jerry making salad for everyone in the house, and then they cut to Jerry again, but this time shoveling salad into his mouth. And all I can picture is him coming right out of the bathroom and going and making this salad for the entire house. So a bunch of people are in the living room and they're all gossiping about this, but then Lori joins the conversation. Instead of laughing and making light of it like everyone else is, she gets offended on Jerry's behalf.
Come on, right now. Who's the spokesperson? Who started it? Who's the first person that brought this up? It was you, right?
The freaking bathroom, and he did not wash his nasty hands. And it's disgusting. I said it. I sure did. Go ahead and get it right now.
Darn right.
Things start to get pretty heated, and then as soon as Jerry enters the conversation, Danielle remains pretty civil. She asks him, please, could you wash your hands after the bathroom? And he's like, okay, no problem. And Lori ends up going home this week, and to be honest, I'm not sure how much of that is a direct result of this blow-up, but probably didn't help. So everybody knows that Big Brother's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Well, sometimes these marathons can get pretty boring. So everyone was pretty bored in the house, and Amy, she was in pageants growing up, so she decided to have the house run a beauty pageant of sorts. Now, there was a Hawaiian-themed competition earlier this week, so they had all these leftover flowers from this comp. Lisa, Kiara, and Tanya wanted to make flower bikinis, but they didn't have any really good way of holding the flowers onto themselves. So what they decided to do is to get creative and to rub peanut butter all over themselves and then stick the flowers to the peanut butter. They came out and all the guys' reactions were pretty typical male reactions, as you could imagine, except for Jason. Jason was the one guy who's the devout Christian who's waiting for marriage to lose his virginity. Jason had a much different reaction than everyone else.
It was a good laugh, but I squirmed a little bit. I was pretty uncomfortable. I would have liked to see them wearing a little bit more than the peanut butter, certainly.
Everyone was having a good time until the California sun started to melt the peanut butter and the flowers started to fall off and the girls had to run inside. So this next one's not really a big moment at the time, but making this video in 2020, I just had to mention this one. You know how every season of Big Brother has the rubber ducks floating around the pool, in the bathroom? Hell, even Big Brother 22 had 1 million ducks in the bathroom to pay homage to the history of Big Brother rubber ducks. Well, you might be thinking, where did this all start? Well, I'll tell you. So Marcellus brought some rubber ducks from home, and for the first time, Big Brother had some rubber ducks in the house. And yeah, like I said, it was pretty inconsequential at the time. They did actually make some cool games out of the ducks, like they had duck ball, which was kind of like modern day cornhole, I guess, and they made water polo, which was cool. But I just found it interesting that these ducks actually have some sort of origin story. So this next one is less of a big moment and more of a series of small moments spread out over a number of episodes. And that's how Eric talks in his sleep. And I know what you're thinking. What's the big deal? Everybody sleep talks once in a while. Yeah, but not quite like Eric. Eric not only sleep talks, but this dude carries out full-on sleep conversations with himself. And sometimes says some really bizarre stuff in the process.
Marcellus kissed me on the cheek the other day, you know. Good old ass grab.
Eric, you are a freak show.
I knew it. You know I'm gonna die right now.
Whoa, somebody get that guy a psychologist stat. Okay, so in week 4, Eric and Lisa were on the block. They were part of the couples alliance, which was 2 couples. There was Eric and Lisa as one couple, and Kiara and Roddy as the other couple. Kiara and Roddy decided that they wanted to save Eric, but Lisa ended up staying. Before she went home, though, Kiara told Josh she didn't trust Lisa anymore, hence why she was voting Lisa to go. Josh told Lisa this, and then eventually Lisa told Kiara this. So it's pretty confusing, but it was basically just a big circle of information that got back to Kiara. And since Kiara was HOH next week, she used this as an excuse to nominate Josh. So Josh is on the block, and come time for the veto ceremony, Josh had quite the veto speech to give.
I think for someone like Kiara to get up there and question my trustworthiness, someone who has a 3-day smear campaign against her best friend and votes her best friend out of the house, someone who promises me she would not put me up for nomination and does, clearly is not a person questioning somebody else's trustworthiness.
Damn, you thought that was bad? Listen to what he had to say in the diary room about her.
Inside, she knows what a ruthless scumbag bitch she is.
Wow, that was about as brutal as you could get without getting bleeped on national TV. Alright, the saga of the first battle back. Or was it a buyback? I'll let you decide for yourself, but nonetheless, it was the first time someone who was voted out came back into the game. It was week 4, and the first 3 evicted house guests have been home for quite some time. Or so we thought. Eric gets evicted, and Julie tells him, "What if I told you it might not be over for you just yet?" So obviously he's hyped, and then Julie reveals to us that the 3 previously evicted house guests have been partying it up in various vacation-y spots like Mexico and the Caribbean. And interestingly enough, it seems like they weren't even really sequestered too much because of some things that Amy revealed to us later about talking to people while she was away. But they bring all 4 evicted house guests back, and Julie asks them, "If you end up winning the game, how much of the $500,000 are you willing to give up to get back in the game right now?" One of them says they'll give up $50K, and the other 3 say they'll give up $250K. Next, Julie busts out some contracts that their legal team wrote up and makes them all sign on it too. So production was looking for 2 frontrunners, so they actually need a tiebreaker. So as a tiebreaker, they asked the remaining evicted house guests, of the remaining 42 days, how many days are you willing to only eat peanut butter and jelly to get back in the house right now? And finally at this point, we get 2 frontrunners, Eric and Amy. The best part about this though, and why they'll never be able to do this trick again, is because once they get 2 frontrunners, Julie takes the contracts and she just rips them up right in front of their faces and says these are null and void. So nobody has to give up any money and nobody has to eat peanut butter and jelly for any extra days. So while they can't do this ever again, I thought this was pretty cool that they did this in the first place. But now that we got 2 frontrunners, the remainder of the people still in the house vote on the person they want to come back in. Now I liked this part especially because it showed off Lisa's strategic side, because even though Eric was her showmance, she still voted for Amy. She knew Eric coming back in the house wouldn't be great for her game because Kiara and Roddy betrayed her, and she didn't want to work with them anymore. And if Eric came back, she'd be put into an awkward spot where she'd probably have to start working with them. And let's be real, this could have been a $500,000 mistake if she went with him. So good job, Lisa. You picked the right person. Ready for another Big Brother first? Up until this point of Big Brother, Julie had a very rigid template to announce the evictions. She reveals the vote count, then she reveals the name of the person and says you are evicted. Well, not this time. This time Julie was having a casual conversation with the house guests. She asks Amy how she felt about being on the block so many times. Amy makes a quick joke and she's like, "Oh, it's not so fun unpacking and packing my bags so many times." So now, get to the vote reveal. Julie reveals the votes and says,
by a vote of 4-0, Amy, you can unpack your bags. Jerry, you are evicted from the Big Brother house.
So given this was the first time Julie ever did this, she probably had a little PTSD because she was evicted once before. And I feel you, Amy, I'd be sweating too. So another cool thing was that Lisa and Danielle both happened to know sign language before entering the house. Lisa seemingly knew a lot more because she had a boyfriend that used sign language with his parents. But Danielle knew the alphabet, and that was good enough. This was particularly interesting because on a number of occasions, they were able to use sign language to talk game right under other people's noses. Like this one time, Amy revealed some game information with Lisa and Danielle in the room. Amy realized about halfway through she was speaking a little too much, and she didn't reveal the name of the person she was talking about. But Lisa knew who she was talking about, and Danielle didn't. So she signed Roddy's name right next to Amy, and Amy didn't even realize it. Another time, right after Marcellus and Danielle had some game talk, Marcellus told Danielle he was thinking of nominating Amy, and there wasn't much time before the nomination ceremony. Danielle ended up signing to Lisa that Marcellus was going to nominate Amy, which was a really big deal because Amy was supposedly Marcellus's best friend in the house. And obviously Lisa's pretty shocked about this. I thought this was pretty resourceful, and it's something we've never seen since. Oh man, so this next one's a doozy, so gear up. Okay, so one day they're getting ready for some sort of food competition. Production tells them to get into their bathing suits.
We panic when you say put on our bathing suits because we're like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen?
Yeah, something's about to happen, but I don't think production could have predicted it. So the comp is pretty simple. There are all these pies, and in these pies there's some medallions, and you need to find them, so go ahead and get them. And it's pretty straightforward, and they finish in just the nick of time. So the competition's over, right? Well, sort of. Without really missing a beat, Roddy decides to start a food fight. Nice. There's all these pies around, they're in bathing suits. Hell, even the wall and floors are saran wrapped, so what better time to start a food fight? Well, it's all in good fun, and they're throwing pies at each other until Amy realizes she lost her ring. And not just any ring, a ring her grandma gave her when she was little that she's had her whole life. The whole mood in the room shifts and gets really serious, and everyone has to search for this ring. And then cut to Marcellus in the diary room, and he's pissed. Because how could you be so irresponsible, right? Well, Amy gets pretty lucky because Danielle ends up eventually finding the ring, and whew, crisis averted. The mood gets light again, and they all go to the backyard to use the outdoor shower so they can get all the pie off them. But then, Amy loses the ring. Again. Girl, get it together. And Marcellus is even more pissed and actually ends up putting her on the block. And you know how the cookie cutter nomination speech is, hey, this is for game reasons, it's nothing personal? Well, Marcellus goes the exact opposite route.
This is just more of...
the game.
No, it's not the game. Don't belittle it.
Marcellus and the veto. Oh boy, this one's iconic. So this is undoubtedly the biggest moment of the season and up there for the biggest moments of all time. So to properly explain this one, we have to start at the beginning. And I mean all the way at the beginning. Big Brother 2. So Big Brother 2 was a fun season, but it was lacking in some core Big Brother mechanics. Every week, someone won HOH, they would nominate 2 people, and one of those people goes home. Sure, you had your social game to rely on to save yourself, but that was about it. There was no veto. Then Big Brother 3 comes in, week 1, after nominations. So they go ahead and introduce the silver power of veto. And yes, that's right, it's not the modern golden power of veto. So the main difference between these two is that with the silver, if you're a nominee on the block and you win the silver power of veto, you can't use it on yourself. You can use it on the other nominee, or you can choose to not use it, but you can't use it on yourself. It's kind of interesting, and it did create a pretty different dynamic than the golden power of veto has, but I think they noticed in the season that it wasn't quite balanced right. So at the final 5, they throw up Expect the Unexpected onto the TV again. They finally introduce the golden power of veto. So this week, Marcellus and Amy are nominees on the block, and Marcellus wins the now golden power of veto, and he has the power for the first time ever to take himself off the block and guarantee his place in the final 4. So Danielle, who didn't want the nominations to change, did everything in her power to make sure Marcellus did not use the veto. And honestly, it felt like kind of a Hail Mary, but hey, you gotta shoot your shot. So it comes time for the veto meeting, and Marcellus doesn't use the veto on himself. I repeat, Marcellus does not use the veto on himself. And the rest is history because Marcellus gets blindsided and evicted on that night. And honestly, this is probably one of the best blindsides of all time. And Marcellus is so blindsided that he has to quickly pack some of his things live on national TV. And then Julie, in a not-so-Chenbot fashion, smacks him with her cue card and says what we were all thinking.
First of all, Marcellus, I need to do this to you.
Oh, no!
What were you thinking?
So thank you, Julie. Hey, so that was my top 10 Big Brother 3 moments. Was there anything that I missed that I should have included? How about something on the live feeds that I didn't see? Let me know down in the comments section below. And if you liked what you saw, go ahead and subscribe because I'm going to make a video for every Big Brother US season. And click right here to see more. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
I definitely feel that I've been deemed the Lizard King.
You don't even know my real name. I'm the Lizard King.